All right, y'all, welcome to the Scott Horton Show. I'm the director of the Libertarian Institute, editorial director of antiwar.com, author of the book Fool's Errand, Time to End the War in Afghanistan, and the brand new Enough Already, Time to End the War on Terrorism. And I've recorded more than 5,500 interviews since 2003, almost all on foreign policy, and all available for you at scotthorton.org. You can sign up for the podcast feed there, and the full interview archive is also available at youtube.com/Scott Horton Show. All right, you guys, on the line, I've got Misty Winston, and I've been on her show a few times. It's on TNT Radio, the Misty Winston Show, and we're Twitter buds. And she brought up a subject to me in the DMs there the other day that I have neglected for a very long time. Covered this back in the 1990s on Say It Ain't So, actually, I think. My old friend AJ, this was a big topic of his, and that is the freeing of Leonard Peltier. It's almost like a cliche, but no, it's a real man sitting in a cage. And yeah. I forgot everything I know about this case now. So I'm very happy to have you back on the show to talk about Leonard and his case and what anybody is doing about it right now. Hi, Misty. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Really appreciate you joining us here. So, who's Leonard Peltier?
So Leonard Peltier is he uses the word Indian, so I'll use that word as well. I know that can be controversial. Some people get very up in arms about different terminology. But he is an Indian who in 1976 was arrested for the killing of 2 FBI agents. There was a shootout at Pine Ridge Ranch. It's a really long and complicated. There's a lot of history and nuance and context and everything that people really need to be aware of. But the short story is that he was at Pine Ridge Ranch when 2 FBI agents followed a truck onto the property. For whatever reason, we don't really know the whole story. We likely will never know the real story. There ended up being a shootout. 2 FBI agents were killed, as well as a fellow Indian, a member of AIM, which is the American Indian Movement, that kind of an advocacy group. So Leonard was kind of held as the scapegoat. There was a lot of really shoddy investigative work. There is a lot of really questionable evidence that was used against him. And so now he has been in prison for 16,894 days, 10 hours, 18 minutes, and 2 seconds as of right now. There's a counting clock on the whoisleonardpeltier.info website, which is a great website where you can find out more information about his case and all of that good stuff. So that in a nutshell is who Leonard Peltier is.
Mm-hmm. All right, now, so, is it your belief then, looking at it, that he really did just get stuck with the blame and that the dead guy is the one who killed the 2 cops? Or you think that there's some reason to believe maybe he actually did kill the cops?
I don't know. We don't know. And
because
we'll never
the trial was just so unjust that you just think he deserves a new one? Is that it?
Well, yeah, for sure. There's no question that there is enough questionable evidence, because the casing that they used that was involved with the shooting wasn't even associated with Leonard's gun that he supposedly had at that time. The investigation was very questionable. The evidence that was used against him has been very questionable. A lot of evidence was withheld, not just from the court itself, but also from the defense team. If at the very bare minimum, he should get a new trial. But he is now in his late 70s. His health is declining rapidly. He's in really poor health. He has a multitude of different health issues. It seems that, perhaps we could just get him out of prison, or he's in a maximum security prison, no less. There's even been an effort to try to get him moved to a minimum security prison. He's nearly 80. He's really not a risk to anybody. So, the goal is to get him out of prison. I know that there's a big push for a pardon. That's kind of what his legal team is trying to push for, get everybody to call for a pardon. But yes, I think that at the very bare minimum, he deserves a new trial.
Yeah. Well, and look, people should not underestimate how ruthless the U.S. government is. Remember Irwin Schiff, Peter Schiff's father, who was, advocated people not paying their income taxes. He died shackled to his bed. They are as ruthless as they would accuse any authoritarian government in the world of being. And the fact that this guy's still in a maximum security prison is a perfect example of that. It's like the embargo against Cuba or something. It's just they're making an example out of this guy. That if you come after us, especially if you even may have touched a Fed, you will be buried under the Supermax. You'll never see the light of day again. And let that be a lesson to everybody else, you know?
Yeah, that's exactly what they're doing to him. And they've moved him all over the country. He's been in, I think, most of the maximum security facilities. He's now in Florida, which is, all the way across the country from his family. They've made everything incredibly difficult. It's very difficult to visit him. It's very difficult to get an interview with him. It's very difficult to even just get a phone call. I just recently interviewed the hosts of the Leonard Political Prisoner podcast, which is an excellent podcast. If anybody wants to know, all of the historical context and all the nuance and everything, because this case is really complicated. It's difficult for me to kind of wrap it up in a quick answer. So if anybody wants to know, that's a really fantastic podcast. But I just interviewed them, and they said that just getting him on the phone, if they can get him on the phone, he's given like 10-15 minutes, and that's it. That's max. And so they really have made an example out of him. And the fact that there's been so much that's come out since his trial. But I mean, in the United States legal system, it's really difficult. Once you've been convicted, it's really difficult for them to get them to go back and look at that again, because you're essentially asking the court to admit that maybe they got it wrong, and that's really hard. That's hard.
Yeah, well, that's government for you. They're a monopoly, and so you can't go to the competition. There ain't none.
Exactly.
Right now, is he under the so-called special administrative measures? Do you know?
I don't think so. Technically, he just being in a maximum security prison.
Pretty close anyway.
Yeah. I mean, the restrictions are pretty intense.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, the SAMs are that's a whole other level of isolation. But,
that's torture. Yeah.
Now, and so, okay, can you go back and tell us a little bit about the American Indian movement and what was going on in this period in the 1970s with the FBI and? Is this part of the counterintelligence program of Hoover and all of that, or what's happening?
Yeah, there's so much that really goes into it. I mean, again, if people want to know, I cannot say enough about the podcast that Andrew and Rory did. Again, it's called Leonard Political Prisoner. I just interviewed them. They did a really fantastic job because it is so complicated. There's a lot. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of history here. This really goes back, a long time. But yeah, the AIM movement was just basically kind of the attempt by, I guess, I hate saying Indian, Native American, whatever. I don't care what you call it. But all of the oppression that they were facing, their land being stolen, the treaties not being, adhered to, all of that stuff that they were kind of facing, the, increased police brutality, all of that stuff. This was kind of in response to that. And so it was just like, a movement that was trying to, kind of fight back against that oppression. There was, there's a lot to go into. I mean, there's a lot of historical context that, about what had been happening, in the Black Hills and, all of the land that was stolen. Here you can have this land. Oh, it's got resources. So never mind. We're going to take that back. Or we're going to take that away from you. AIM was just kind of a response group that came up, in an attempt to kind of fight back against what was happening at the federal level, and trying to regain some of their humanity, I guess. A lot of that was taken from them. And Leonard was a very active movement in that, or a very active member in that movement. As were a lot of people in that area at Pine Ridge, they were all very active in that movement. So, again, there's so much, like, I don't even know where to start, really. I really don't even know where to start.
Yeah, that's all right. Hang on just one second. Hey, y'all, they've got great deals on weed at thehempspot.com. The Hemp Spot specializes in Delta-8 tetrahydrocannabinol instead of Delta-9, so they can send it straight to you anywhere in America. Recently, a friend moved and didn't have a guy in his new town, but then he heard about the hempspot.com on my show and was saved, figuratively and literally, because if you use the promo code Scott, you get 15% off every order and free shipping on any order over $100. Legal jams, bud, gummies, and the rest in your state. TheHempSpot.com. Spell the THC. You guys, my friend Mike Swanson has written such a great revisionist take on the early history of the post-World War II national security state and military-industrial complex in the Truman, Eisenhower, and Kennedy years. It's called The War State. I have to say, it's the most convincing case I've read that Kennedy had truly decided to end the Cold War before he was killed. In any case, I know you'll love it. The War State by Mike Swanson. Some of y'all have a problem. You've got chickens, but you don't want to stand around throwing food at them all day because of all the important stuff you have to do. Well, the solution to that is to get the free-range feeder from freerangefeeder.com. The free-range feeder has been developed to satisfy the needs of the poultry chicken hobbyist and the homesteader. The convertible design allows for 4 different mounting methods. Go to freerangefeeder.com/Scott or use promo code Scott to get 15% off and get the free ebook. Subscribe to their newsletter to immediately receive your free copy of Getting Started with Backyard Chickens. That's freerangefeeder.com/Scott. You know, I think people kind of have an idea of the 70s. It's sort of the post-anti-Vietnam War left, sort of the post-civil rights era, or the next kind of chapter in that era. And, you know, obviously a lot of American Indians were saying, well, hey, what about us? You talk about getting screwed around here, you know?
Yeah. Yes.
And then, of course, obviously you have the FBI just as interested in destroying that as they were going after the Black Panthers or the Ku Klux Klan or any other, you know, attempted separate center of real power in the country, which is, you know, if you want to do politics in America, you can join the Republican or Democratic Party. Otherwise, you're in trouble. Yeah. That's basically the deal, you know?
Yeah, no. And it really was just out of a response to, I mean, if you go back and you look at all of the things, it was an accumulation of events. Obviously, that's usually how these kinds of things are born. But in the late 60s and early 70s, there really was kind of this attempt to fight back against, just this crazy level of discrimination, the theft of land, all of this stuff, the broken treaties. I mean, there was just broken promise after broken promise after broken promise. And they were fed up. And so I think AIM was just created, out of that frustration just feeling as if they were being taken advantage of and not heard, which, is, very clear. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that they were fighting against high unemployment and the bad housing and racist treatment and treaty rights and the reclaiming of their tribal lands. All of that stuff. I mean, illness, poverty, all of that stuff that was really running rampant in the Native communities. That was really just kind of their attempt at fighting back against this. And they were pretty outspoken, no question about it. But I think that the FBI doesn't like, they don't like being fought back against. The United States government doesn't like being, you're just supposed to, sit back and take it, do as you're told. Go along, get along, all that good stuff. And they weren't really interested in that. So there was definitely kind of a targeting of AIM members. No question about it. I mean, there was, I think, I might get this figure wrong. I think there was like 68 murders. I might be wrong on that. Maybe 63. I don't know. I'm getting my numbers a little bit fuzzy, but of different AIM members randomly throughout, there was the Goon Squad, which again is another, like, there's a lot of context there that people could go back and learn about. But yeah, there was a lot. They were very targeted during this time period in the late 60s and early to mid 70s, all the way up until, the shootout that happened. So, it was a really rough time for the Native communities. No question about it.
And then, so this shootout was the culmination of all of it when he was arrested and a couple of the others, and that was the end of the thing, or?
I guess I guess it was the culmination of, I mean, it was just kind of the way that everything built up to what happened to Leonard. I mean, just if you're in reference to his story, I mean, I think that the Native communities are still in a battle for their rights and for, all of that good stuff. But yeah, as far as Leonard's story, that really was, it was an accumulation of events that kind of took place through the late 60s and early to mid 70s. And then, as I said, there was I think it was like a red and white truck or van or something, and the federal agents followed it onto Pine Ridge Ranch. And like I said, we don't really know, and we'll likely never know what actually happened and how the shootout started. The feds say that, they were fired upon first. Obviously, Leonard and his crew say that they were fired upon first. We will never know for sure what the actual story is that took place, and how, who actually was at fault or who. I mean, I think it's really complicated. I mean, and in a shootout, it's really difficult to kind of judge. But I know that the federal agents were shot point blank. And then I think that the AIM member, I think, was maybe like it was like a snipe situation. But yeah, 3 people ended up dying, and we'll never know the whole story. And essentially, there were 2 other people who were they got tried, and I think they were. They weren't convicted, but then they went after Leonard, and they ended up moving Leonard's trial to a different location. They learned a lot from the first trials of the 2, I guess they called them co-conspirators, or co-defendants or whatever. So they learned a lot. The federal government learned a lot from losing that court case. And so they moved Leonard's trial to a different location, and really fought to keep out a lot of stuff from the trial, and ended up successfully convicting him, and he's been in prison ever since.
Yeah, man. All right. So tell me about the activism that you guys have going on now.
Okay, so I mean, I've been super involved in my focus has always been kind of more targeted journalists and whistleblowers. I'm heavily involved in the Julian Assange movement. But when I was listening to the podcast, I mean, I've been familiar with Leonard's work, or with Leonard's story, and the work to get Leonard freed. And I, have commented about it and talked about it. I haven't been super heavily involved, but when I talked to the hosts of the podcast, one of the things that they said that the legal team would really like to see is for people to kind of make a push on the White House and fight for a pardon. So one of the ways that we can do that, and I figured this is a super easy way for everybody to get involved. The White House comment line is open from Tuesday through Thursday from 11 a.m. until 3 p.m. It's weird to me that they're so restrictive on the times. But so from Tuesday to Thursday this week from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., we want to do a phone call frenzy. Everybody call. You can call the White House comment line. It's 202-456-1111. Super easy. 202-456-1111. And just leave a quick message. Doesn't have to be anything super detailed. Just express your support for Leonard Peltier and request that Joe Biden, pardon him, or maybe you could suggest that there be a push for a new trial. I know that Leonard is really unwell. He's got a lot going on. He was diagnosed with COVID in late January, early February. He's got a lot of other health issues, and he is again in his late 70s. So, it would just be nice that he could, spend out his remaining days with his family. He's an artist. He loves to paint. So we're trying to make a push. It's really quick and easy. Phone calls are very easy. So if everybody could just take a couple minutes out of your day on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and call the White House comment line and request a pardon, that's something that the legal team would really appreciate. I know, and I know Leonard would as well.
All right, cool. So that's 202-456-1111. And tell us again the name of that podcast if everybody wants to go and sign up and look at that.
So, and I really cannot recommend it enough. Again, I'm not like an expert on Leonard. I just, really was just trying to help with this push here to get some support to the White House and try to get for this pardon. But the podcast is called Leonard Political Prisoner. It's available on all podcast platforms. They also have a Twitter. I believe it is Leonard Pod, at Leonard Pod. And the hosts are amazing. They were heavily in contact with Leonard and his team. They have a lot of interviews with a lot of his friends who were, involved in that time. And I'm sorry, it's Leonard_pod. My apologies. Okay. And then they also have links there where you can find the podcast. And they do a really great job. Again, it's like a really complicated case. There's a lot that goes into this. There's a lot of history that's involved. And Andrew and Rory did a great job of really kind of diving into that and, presenting a comprehensive and thorough storyline so that everybody can kind of get a feel for, what actually was going down and how, because really there's so much screwed up about this case. And the evidence that was presented, the way it was presented, a lot of stuff was withheld. They coerced 3 teenagers to testify against Leonard. Those kids have come out since then and said that they, were kind of forced into testifying. I mean, there's a lot. So I highly recommend anybody who wants to learn more about Leonard and his case to check out that podcast. It is very good. Leonard is a political prisoner. There's no question about it. If everybody could just make those phone calls on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I'm not sure it'll do any good, but it certainly doesn't hurt to try.
Yeah, there you go. All right, Misty Winston, TNT Radio, and what's the website for that?
It's tntradio.live, I think.
Okay. All right, good times.
So bad.
I really appreciate that. And everybody follow Misty on Twitter at Sarcasm Stardust. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it.
The Scott Horton Show, Anti-War Radio, can be heard on KPFK 90.7 FM in LA, APSradio.com, antiwar.com, scotthorton.org, and libertarianinstitute.org.